From the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, this is the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. We take questions from anyone in the dental profession and discuss what it takes to win not only in dentistry, but in life. Business, leadership, relationships, parenting, health and wellness, money management, nothing is off limits on the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. I'm Jason Tenori, your host, and have over 20 years of experience to pull from. Learn from my mistakes and let me help you collapse time so you can become the best version of yourself. Hey, I had an awesome coaching call yesterday, and we unpacked a lot of stuff. I just thought that it would be beneficial to kind of unpack that for you guys, because I have a suspicion it'll help you. So the call started with this doc, great guy, he was given a tool on different ways to present treatment financially, financial menu, a lot of people call it, right? So there's basically different options. There's cash discount and there's care credit and there's a number of different things. So most of us have the ability to offer, let's say, 3 or 4 different options for patients. So that's what we would call a financial menu. So he got this tool and basically gave it to his office manager or his treatment coordinator and said, run with it, right? Spent 5 or 10 minutes with him going over it. And it just didn't get implemented well. It didn't land well. And he was frustrated. And he said, Jason, what can I do about that? So I talked to him a little bit about, when we delegate tasks, we have to, it takes way longer to train somebody properly if we're going to delegate a task to them. Rory Varden, in one of his books, talks about if it's going to take you 10 minutes to perform this task, it's going to take you 30 times that amount to train somebody to do it. I don't know if I agree with that, but his point is very, very clear. Like, it's going to take a hell of a lot longer than you think it's going to take, right? So if there's a task that takes you 10 minutes to do at a super high level, his thought process, it's going to take 30 times that, so 300 minutes, which is 5 hours, right? So if it takes you 10 minutes to really understand and properly present financial options to patients, will it take you 5 hours to train someone to do it at the same level that you can do it? No, it's not going to take you 5 hours, but it's going to take you an hour. It's going to take you an hour and a half. And then, with kind of revisiting it, it's going to take you a little bit longer. So then the conversation goes to the point of, okay, if I'm going to need all that time, I just simply don't have it. I'm at the chair all the time. So this is the conundrum that we're always facing, right? So we're so busy clinically, we're so busy working in the business that we don't have time to work on the business. And I know many of you guys realize that's language from Gerber's book, E-Myth, right? And we all know this in theory, but the reality is, how do we execute on this, right? So I told him he's working 4 days a week clinically, 8 hours a day, let's say, right? And he had a scarcity mindset. He was fearful that if he were to close down clinically for X amount of hours a week, it would really hurt his revenue and hurt his profitability. So let's unpack that for a second. I have never, and I mean this, never, and I coach a lot of people, I have never seen someone drop their revenue when they go from 4 days to 3.5. So on average, they're losing about 3 to 4 hours of clinical time per week. Literally, I have never seen a drop in revenue. Why? Because subconsciously, you have to figure out how to be more efficient with your time. You schedule better. You become more efficient with your procedures. The other part of that is, in those 3 hours that you're giving up, now call it non-clinical time, we're working on the business time, you have such an opportunity to train your team on getting better. So I presented that to him, and he was very hesitant. Scarcity mindset, that's okay. We've all been there. I've been there. So I said, okay, if we're not going to go to a half day, what if we went to an hour? What if we found an hour every week where you now had 60 additional minutes to train up your team on different things that are going to ultimately make you better? So one solution that I proposed to him was you take lunch every day from 12 to 1. As you guys know, that 10 to 2 o'clock area is typically the toughest to fill hygiene. So what if one day per week, instead of having lunch from 12 to 1, we had lunch from 12 to 2. So we shut down the office from 1 to 2. So now you have a 2-hour lunch. You buy lunch once a week or every other week if you're even nervous about this 1 hour per week. You eat as a team for 20, 30 minutes, and then you have 90 minutes of time to work on the business and train up people. So he was starting to get behind that. I want to share some math with you guys just so kind of we're on the same page. If your office is doing $500-$600 an hour, which is average, that's if you're a solo doc, 5-6 team members, and you're doing $500-$600 an hour, then you're probably doing $1 million. And you're going to lose that hour of revenue, which let's say it's $500. You can make that up by adding $15 to $20 per hour the rest of the week. Now, I'm telling you with 100% guarantee that if you start to work on the business and you start to train some of the things that I'm going to present to you in a few minutes, you will more than make that up on an hourly basis. You'll start to see a 10 or 15% increase in your production on an hourly basis. Not $15 to $20 an hour, but $100, $200 an hour. So you have to pull out of the whirlwind. You have to start working on the business in order to become more proficient when you're working in the business. So again, he wasn't crazy about dedicating a half day per week or even a half day every other week, but he could get on board with an hour a week or an hour every other week. So I'm taking what I can get, right? So then the next question is, Jason, what would we work on? I'm not really sure I can be prepared or have things ready to go to train my team. And again, get it, right? But oh my gosh, there is so many things that you can work on. So I gave him some ideas to create a list of things that they can train on a regular basis. First thing I would do is set up a whiteboard at the end of the hallway and give your team permission that any time throughout the week there's ambiguity with something or there's confusion with something, then you just go to the end of the hallway, you take the dry erase marker and you write it down. This is something we need to work on. This is something I'm not sure about. This is something I overheard that I don't agree with, right? And by the end of the week, you're going to, assuming you have trust and vulnerability built up with your team, you're going to have a pretty significant list, right? So that's a really good way to like at least start the process of what can we work on. But just based on my experience in my own organization and with coaching people, I'll just give you a handful of things that if you were to work on this with your entire team for an hour a week, you would see huge growth in your team the rest of the week, right? So let's talk about some examples. One would be the first thing that he mentioned when we got on the call is this financial menu. What are the financial options that you're presenting to patients? And how do you go about presenting those? Yes, your office manager, your treatment coordinator needs to own that system and really understand it inside and out. But I can assure you that if your hygienist and your assistant have clarity on what the front desk is offering to patients, they can start to have conversations with the patient as well. So the classic example is doc comes in to the hygiene exam, recommends an implant or a bridge or something like that. Patient kind of nods their head, yes, I can do that. Then they leave, and only every single time, the patient's going to look at the hygienist and say, well, how much is that? Well, I can't afford that. So now if the hygienist doesn't have any clarity on the financial menu that the office is presenting to patients, how are they going to respond? You want that hygienist to feel empowered to say to the patient, Mrs. Jones, Doc has got a number of financial options for patients to be able to comfortably afford the treatment that they need. Like, I think you're going to be amazed when I walk you up front, all the different options available to you. You know you need this, I know you need this, and we'll figure out a way to make it affordable. Like, that's so empowering for the hygienist versus, well, let's see what they say at the front desk, right? So little things like that, even though that this specific training is more front desk, having the assistants, having the hygienist, having everyone understand what exactly goes into the training. Now, again, you don't need the assistants and the hygienists to understand how to log into Care Credit, but you want to give them the general gist of it. And something like this can be trained in this additional 60 minutes that we're creating by closing down the office, that additional hour per week. So what else could we do? From my experience, by far, one of the greatest returns on investment is getting your team calibrated with treatment recommendations that the doctor is going to make. Okay? So what do I mean by that? Just poring over photographs and x-rays. And this is when Doc recommends a crown. This is when he recommends a filling. This is when he recommends periodontal treatment. This is when he recommends a recall. If you can spend time getting everyone on the same page for that, this is what happens. The assistant, the hygienist, now based on their experience, based on this newfound knowledge, based on this power that they feel, can say to the patient, Mrs. Jones, there's a crack here next to this silver filling. I can't guarantee what Doc's going to ultimately recommend, but we have a number of patients that have this condition with their tooth, and we've seen it split. Doc routinely recommends a crown because he doesn't want this tooth to split and then you ultimately lose the tooth. Or he doesn't want this tooth to split and then you ultimately need a root canal. I can't guarantee that's what he's going to say, but I just want to give you a heads up. So now that assistant or that hygienist feels like they're communicating with a sense of accuracy and they feel empowered to have that conversation, right? And then the doc comes in and basically backs up what the hygienist or assistant already said. So the doc becomes the second opinion, right? The hygienist, the assistant is the first, that position of authority, right? And then the doc comes in and basically repeats the same exact thing. It will lead to such a higher level of case acceptance, it will blow your mind, right? Versus the doc comes in for the hygiene exam. No one has mentioned anything to the patient about the possibility of this cracked tooth needing a crown. Patient didn't even know they had a cracked tooth, mainly because the hygienist may have not felt empowered to have that conversation. Again, training issue, right? So when the doc now comes in and the doc is the first person that mentions that to the patient, how do you think that goes over? Like a lead balloon. And the patient may ultimately schedule treatment. It depends on their previous level of trust with the doctor. But I can assure you that when the doctor leaves the room, the patient's looking at the hygienist and says the dreaded, do I really need that? The question, do I really need that, never gets asked if the hygienist has already mentioned it to the patient before the doctor exam. So again, little things like this can be hammered out in an hour of additional training. You can do role playing when it comes to this. So another great example, and I don't want to bore you with the dozens of examples that you could use this additional hour of training for, are handoffs, okay? I'm a huge proponent of handoffs. There's multiple opportunities for handoffs in the office, throughout the office. Two classic ones are the hygiene to doctor handoff at a recall exam, but there's other ones like assistant to doctor handoff at a new patient exam, assistant or hygienist handoff to the front desk at the end of the appointment. All of these things. This is just another opportunity for the patient to overhear the same thing again and again. And patient, it's going to sink, right? We've talked about how patients, staff member, my kids need to hear things multiple times before it really soaks in. So just another great opportunity for the patient to hear the message over again. Another great opportunity to make sure that the patient understands that they were heard. Right? I love when my assistants do phenomenal handoffs to me at a new patient exam. So I'll walk in the room. The worst thing that you can do is ask the patient all these questions again. The assistant had already asked the patient these questions. The patient has already answered. And now you come in and you're asking the same exact questions. That's like when you call customer service at some customer support center in India. You tell everyone your name, your date, your social security number, your birthday, and then you get transferred and you have to answer all of those questions again. How does that make you feel? Like shit, right? Like, you know, the person on the other end or the company on the other end is incompetent, right? Don't have your patients perceive you as incompetent. So when you walk into the room with a new patient and the assistant knows to start the handoff, the assistant is now communicating everything that they got from the patient. So what does that do? It saves time. It tells you everything you need to know. But from my perspective, more importantly, the assistant feels heard. The assistant's like, she was really listening to me. She really heard what I had to say. This is a game changer. And I can assure you it's not happening right now because your assistant doesn't feel empowered to know what to ask. They don't feel like they even understand what a really great handoff needs to be from the assistant to the doctor. So again, another training opportunity. So again, let me just kind of summarize here. I know that by closing the office a half day, by taking away 3 or 4 clinical hours, through training in that time, you will become more profitable and ultimately generate more revenue. There's no question on that. It's been my experience personally, and only every single time when I coach people up. If you're ready for that, do it. If you're not ready for that, then find another opportunity throughout the week to do it. Like I said earlier in this video, maybe it's an hour a week, all right? And maybe it's that 1 hour after lunch, so it kind of gives you a little bit of a buffer to do some of this training. And then I've just mentioned a few things that you can start to use to train in that hour that's going to bring huge benefits right away, okay? And if you go through those things and you get them trained up at a high level and now you start looking for additional things to train on, let me know. I'll let you know, right? But if you have that whiteboard set up at the end of the hallway, you'll never run out of things to train your team on. So hope this helped, guys. Again, great call yesterday with a private coaching client. Just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page and hopefully that information that I shared with him, you guys can benefit from in some way. Have a great one. Love you guys.
Thank you. That wraps up another episode of the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. You have a choice today. Choose to be a lighthouse. Lighthouses are powerful and steadfast. They are beacons of light for others to reference when life gets turbulent. Go out into the world today and become a lighthouse for someone. Give more than you get. True joy comes from serving others. Start today. I'm Jason Tenorio, your host. Thank you for listening to the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. For more information, podcast show notes, or links to anything that we have discussed today, please check out our website, thedentallighthouse.com. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to get on the show, please email us at podcast@thedentallighthouse.com.